I remember the first morning I ever felt genuinely proud of myself. I was 12, standing on the cracked driveway of my parents' bungalow in Joliet, Illinois, polishing the dented handlebars of a second-hand bike I had rebuilt from junkyard scraps. Every bolt glinted like a secret no one else could see. 30 years later, leaning against the marble kitchen island of the modern house I share with my wife, Sarah, I felt that same fragile shimmer of pride. But this time I had to hide it so carefully that even the sunlight might betray me. Sarah was pouring mimosas for her Saturday ritual with the girls. She swirled the orange juice, laughing, the late March sunlight sharpening the gold in her loose hair. "Mike, could you grab the extra flutes?" she asked without looking at me. I opened the cabinet, set the glasses beside the iced bottle of Prosecco, and slipped out before the first doorbell rang. In the garage, I shrugged into the navy blazer that meant investor pitch to my team and drove downtown for a breakfast meeting that would, if it landed, fund our next 18 months. By 11, I was back, deal signed, mind buzzing with numbers, and I found the living room already thick with perfume and bright voices. The sectional couch was awash in pastel dresses, Cameron pink on Lindsay, lemon yellow on Brittany, white floral on Courtney. Sarah wore emerald green, short, off-shoulder, perfect against her tan. They were mid-story, champagne glasses lifted, faces alight with a cruelty so casual that it took me a heartbeat to realize I was the target. "Honestly, ladies," Sarah said, tapping her phone for some private meme. "He keeps saying he's building connections, but what does that even mean? I checked the joint account yesterday. 0 salary deposits for the 3rd month in a row." Lindsay snorted. "Maybe he's writing a novel. That's code for unemployed." Courtney widened her eyes theatrically. "Or he's an influencer with 1 follower, himself." Laughter spilled like loose change. I froze in the hallway, holding a grocery bag with fresh bagels I had meant as a surprise. Through the archway, I could see only the back of Sarah's head, crisp waves bobbing as she giggled. Brittany raised her glass. "To the husband who thinks LinkedIn endorsements pay rent." The toast triggered a new burst of hilarity. It rang louder than the deal memo in my briefcase, louder than the memory of the first million we had billed last quarter. I should have walked in, declared the truth, dropped the signed term sheet on the coffee table like a magician's reveal. Instead, I retreated, heart drumming, and sat alone in my car for 10 minutes, watching neighborhood kids draw chalk hearts on the curb. When we married 6 years ago, Sarah told me she valued humility, that flashy success repelled her. The IT consultancy I was piecing together back then was nothing but a small brain trust of freelancers, so secrecy was easy. As the company grew, I held on to that quiet space like a superstition. If I kept the success hidden, our marriage would stay real. I never imagined she would weaponize the illusion. That evening, after the girls left, Sarah padded into my office barefoot, still tipsy. "You disappeared," she said. "Everything okay?" I saved the PowerPoint slide I was editing. Projected revenue arc curving boldly upward. "Fine. Just tired." She kissed my cheek, peppermint lip gloss and champagne. "Get some sleep, babe. Tomorrow's another big day of networking." The playful mockery stung. I waited until she was gone, then opened the employee directory. 3 names. Lindsay Carter, UX lead, Brittany Mills, QA analyst, Courtney Hayes, account manager. All hired on merit, though Sarah's recommendations had nudged their resumes to the top of the pile. The irony left a metallic taste on my tongue. At dawn, I drafted 3 severance letters, concise and polite. Company policy required HR to handle terminations, but as sole owner, I could authorize exceptions. I told myself it was discipline, not revenge. After all, no organization can thrive when employees publicly belittle leadership, even unknowingly. Yet while my fingers typed, I pictured their smirks, and that fueled each keystroke. HR scheduled exit interviews for Monday. I instructed them to keep quiet until the emails triggered on Friday at 4 p.m., 1 hour after payroll hit their accounts. Generosity, I reasoned, wrapped in sharp ribbon. On Wednesday night, Sarah hosted another gathering, movie theme, pajamas and popcorn. I stayed at the office late, monitoring code merges, but curiosity tugged me home early. In the driveway, I overheard my name again. Courtney, did you see his face Saturday? Like a lost puppy. Sarah, he'll land something eventually. He's sweet, just not driven. My chest tightened. Did she believe that? Or was belittling me a performance, a social currency among those friends? Which answer hurt more? Thursday morning, I asked my assistant, Jonah, to prepare refreshed org charts -3 roles. He raised an eyebrow but complied. By evening, the documents were ready, sealed envelopes on my desk. I slid them into my briefcase beside the new office keys, symbolic, maybe, yet perfectly weighted for the moment I envisioned. Friday dawned bright and cold. Sarah kissed me goodbye, unaware of the storm on the horizon. I spent the morning finalizing a security software proposal, signed a contract that pushed annual revenue north of 8 figures, then watched the clock crawl toward 4. The email automation executed at 4:01. 10 seconds later, Brittany called Sarah. At 4:05, Courtney texted me, frantic. I ignored the buzzing phone, stepped into the elevator, and drove home. The living room scene at 4:45 felt almost theatrical. The three women clustered around Sarah, eyes red, termination letters clutched like subpoena papers. Sarah looked up as I entered, confusion morphing into dawning horror. Mike, something awful has happened at your company. My company? I echoed, sliding out of my coat. She swallowed. The place the girls work. Anderson Innovations. I met Lindsay's glare, Brittany's trembling lip, Courtney's silent tears. Yes, I said, my company. A silence thick as wet cement filled the room. I spoke evenly, explaining that public disrespect toward leadership violated Code of Conduct Clause 7B. I cited examples, verbatim, from last Saturday. Did they recall? Their faces confirmed they did. Sarah's hands flew to her mouth. She whispered my name like a plea. I finished. Effective immediately, their positions were eliminated. Severance exceeded industry standard. References would be neutral, not glowing. Lindsay's voice cracked. You can't be serious. I kept my tone professional. I am painfully serious. Sarah stepped forward. Michael, please. They're my friends. I felt the old driveway pride surge, bright, private. Were they your friends when they humiliated your husband for sport? She flinched. The clock ticked. Outside, a lawnmower droned, absurdly mundane. Finally, Sarah whispered, I didn't know. No, I said softly. You chose not to know. The women gathered their things. Courtney paused, eyes rimmed in mascara and disbelief, then followed the others out. The front door shut with a definitive click. Night settled. Sarah and I sat at opposite ends of the couch. She stared at her knees. I watched the amber reflection of a floor lamp in the dark TV screen. Minutes passed before she spoke. I thought humility meant hiding accomplishments. I never meant to shame you. You laughed, I said. That mattered more than what you meant. Tears slipped down her cheeks. I'm sorry. I wanted to believe her. I loved her still, but trust felt like a porcelain cup hair cracked from a single careless drop. Maybe reparable, maybe not. I stood, retrieved the term sheet envelope from my briefcase, and placed it on the coffee table. Series B, I said. $17 million. We close next month. She traced the embossed logo, eyes swimming. Why didn't you tell me? Because I wanted you to love the man who rebuilt bikes in Joliet, not the CEO on magazine covers. I exhaled. I'm beginning to realize you can love both, or neither, but the decision isn't mine to manipulate. We talked until dawn, words fragile, careful, honest. We spoke of boundaries, respect, transparency. When the sun rose, Sarah brewed coffee. Steam curled between us like a peace flag. No verdict reached, but maybe the start of one. Monday, HR completed exit paperwork. Replacement postings went live. Productivity never dipped. If anything, morale spiked, a silent testament that the company listened when culture turned toxic. Wednesday, Jonah knocked. Sir, the new designers start next week. Anything else? I thought of Lindsay's mocking grin, Brittany's champagne toast, Courtney's wide eyes, then of Sarah's tearful apology and our sleepless conversation. Yes, I said. Add an onboarding module. Empathy in workplace communication. Jonah smiled, jotted a note, and left. That evening I cycled the rebuilt bike from my childhood, refurbished again, chrome shining, through the leafy streets. Pedaling, I felt the chain hum, the wind tugging my blazer, the simple rhythm that had started my journey. Pride, I realized, doesn't have to hide. It just needs to stay tethered to decency. When I reached home, Sarah waited on the porch with 2 mugs of peppermint tea. She watched me lean the bike against the rail. "Ride was good?" she asked. "Perfect," I said, and I meant it. She handed me a mug. "I called Brittany today, not to beg, just to say I'd failed her as a friend by encouraging cruelty." "How did she take it?" "She listened." "We'll see." We drank quietly. Dusk painted the sky violet. An ambulance wailed somewhere distant, fading. Sarah set her mug down. "Michael, do you still want to be married to me?" The question rippled through the growing dark. I thought of the cracked driveway and the first gleam of pride, the marble kitchen and the sharp laughter, the boardroom triumphs and the empty hallway. I considered the pieces of myself I had hidden and the parts she had displayed. I reached for her hand. "Let's find out," I said. She nodded, eyes bright with something like hope. Inside, my phone buzzed. A message from Jonah. "Investor dinner confirmed for Friday." Or something that says, "Visionary." I smiled. Maybe this time I would tell Sarah in advance. Maybe I was learning that humility wasn't silence, and pride wasn't noise, but rather the steadiness between them. I turned off the porch light. Together we stepped into the house, into the soft, uncertain glow of whatever came next. Months later, long after the sting of the firings had faded into office folklore, I attended a leadership retreat in Sedona designed for founders fraying at the edges. The facilitator asked each of us to hike to an overlook and write a letter to the first version of ourselves who ever dreamed of success. I sat on a flat red boulder, the desert wind flaring my notebook pages, and pictured 11-year-old me kneeling beside that junkyard bike. I told him the world would laugh sometimes, that even people he loved might aim jokes at the tenderest part of him, but that forgiveness would one day feel stronger than payback. On the flight home, I reread the letter until the paper softened like fabric. Turbulence rocked the cabin. The seatbelt sign chimed. A passenger shrieked. I folded the pages, placed them in the seatback pocket, then retrieved them again. Some truths you can't leave behind for strangers. Back in Chicago, twilight mottled the runway with lavender shadows. I texted Sarah, "Landing soon. Feel like celebrating?" She replied with a selfie from our kitchen. Flower on her nose, doughy hands raised in surrender. A caption, "Attempting homemade pizza, send help." I grinned and typed on my way. During the drive, I passed our office tower, lights still blazing on the 23rd floor. I thought of Jonah polishing the week's metrics, of interns debugging code, of the entire humming organism that bore my name, yet thrived on collective pulse. Ownership, I realized, did not equal omnipotence. It meant accountability squared. When I entered the house, the smell of yeast and garlic greeted me. Sarah danced to a low-volume Motown playlist, hair in a messy bun. She looked up. "Captain Visionary returns." I saluted with the forgotten in-flight cookie I had pocketed. "Permission to assist, chef?" We rolled dough together, laughter mixing with flour dust. Midway through kneading, Sarah said, "I talked to Courtney last week. She got a role at a nonprofit. She sounds happier." "That's good," I said, genuinely relieved. "She thanked me," Sarah added, "for never sugarcoating her ego." "Strange, huh?" "Not so strange," I replied. "Sometimes losing a mirror forces you to polish your own." Sarah chuckled, then grew serious. "Do you ever regret the way you handled that day?" I placed the dough on a pan, smoothing edges. "I regret not confronting the disrespect sooner." "Determination, no. The manner, perhaps. But intent matters too." She nodded, eyes shining with thoughtful acceptance. We layered sauce and mozzarella. While the pie baked, we played cards at the dining table. She dealt kings and queens, and I remembered our wedding vows echoing under vaulted stained glass. To honor, to protect, to challenge. Somewhere along the line, we had twisted challenge into mockery. We were unwinding the braid now, thread by delicate thread. The timer dinged. We burned our tongues on the first slice and laughed. Between bites, Sarah said, "The retreat letter, you'll show me?" "Someday," I said, "when I've lived up to its advice." Later, as rain tapped the windows, we lay in bed, limbs tangled. She whispered into the dark, "Thank you for not giving up on me." The words warmed a part of me untouched, even by victory. The following quarter, our firm launched a scholarship for women in tech, named in honor of my late mother, an electrical engineer who broke ceilings with solder and steel. Sarah headed the selection committee. During the first award ceremony, she stood behind the podium, voice clear and proud. Anderson Innovations believes in voices that build, not belittle. Our eyes met across the crowd. Her smile held depth and sincerity I'd missed for years. Afterwards, Lindsay approached me quietly. She had attended as a mentor for one of the finalists. "Michael, I've wanted to apologize," she began. "What I said was cruel. Getting fired was the slap I needed. I'm different now." I searched her expression and found no self-pity, only humility. "Thank you," I said, shaking her hand. "Growth looks good on you." Brittany emailed months later, sharing an indie game she had QA tested end to end. Courtney sent a holiday card featuring her nonprofit team building sustainable playgrounds. The card read, "Loss can be the door to purpose." I pinned it on my office corkboard. One snowy morning, Jonah burst in clutching a tech magazine. I was on the cover, under the headline, "The Invisible CEO Who Fired His Wife's Bullies and Built a Culture of Grace." I groaned. "Great, subtle." Sarah happened to visit for lunch. She picked up the magazine, traced the embossed letters. "Invisible no more," she teased, then turned serious. "Michael, are you comfortable being seen now?" I hesitated, feeling the ghost of the cracked driveway under my feet. "I think so," I said, "because now I know visibility isn't vanity. It's stewardship." That night, I placed the Sedona letter into a shadow box frame beside a photo of Sarah and me covered in flour. At the bottom, I typed a single line: "Pride paired with kindness powers empires." The display sits in our hallway. Guests pause, ask its story. I tell them it's still being written. In early spring of the following year, the board insisted I sit for a podcast interview, a tell-all about leadership transparency. I agreed on one condition. Sarah would join me as co-guest, representing the viewpoint of someone who had once misread my silence. The producers loved the idea. The recording took place in a glass studio high above the river. The host, Jordan Reyes, wore neon sneakers and grilled us with warmth disguised as mischief. Jordan leaned toward the mic. "Listeners want the juicy part. Michael, why keep your CEO status secret from your own spouse?" I inhaled, feeling the foam of studio panels absorb the pause. "Because I feared success would change how we saw each other." I was wrong. Secrecy changed us more. Jordan pivoted. "Sarah, when did mockery turn into malice?" She answered without flinching. "The moment I forgot humor is the scalpel of intimacy, not a sledgehammer." The episode went viral, clipped into motivational reels and leadership TikToks. Strangers emailed me confessions of hidden achievements. Others wrote that they'd stopped belittling partners' dreams. One message, from a college freshman named Tasha, read, "Your story convinced me to switch my major from economics to computer science, even if nobody cheers yet." I forwarded it to Sarah with a heart emoji. She replied, "Our ripple is showing." At our next all-hands meeting, I played a montage of employees' baby photos, a reminder that every expert had once needed help tying shoes. Laughter and tender groans filled the auditorium. Then I shared the company value rewrite. We elevate quietly, but defend loudly. A standing ovation followed. In the back row, I saw Lindsay wiping tears. Team dynamics flourished. Anonymous feedback scores on psychological safety, which had hovered at a respectable 7.1, soared to 9.3. Turnover dropped by half. Quarterly profits climbed, not despite the shifts, but because of them. Respect, I learned, compounds faster than capital. One afternoon, the CFO flagged a line item: 12 bicycles ordered through corporate procurement. Employee wellness pilot. I explained. Every new hire would spend a lunch hour assembling a bike for a local child. The symbolism delighted me. Build, give, repeat. Sarah volunteered to coordinate donations. On assembly day, I watched interns fumble with pedals, senior engineers coach, and shy accountants discover socket wrenches. The finished bikes lined the foyer like a rainbow of possibility. After the children rode away, Jonah nudged me. "Feels like that cracked driveway moment all over, huh?" I nodded, throat tight. Exactly. Summer brought an industry award gala. Sarah and I entered arm in arm, paparazzi bulbs strobing. A reporter asked what innovation I was proudest of. I glanced at Sarah and said, emotional architecture. The reporter blinked, expecting blockchain or quantum. We design systems, I clarified, but we inhabit feelings. The comment trended for days, mocked in some circles, applauded in others. Lindsay tweeted a defense. If more bosses cared about emotional architecture, we'd have fewer exit interviews. Her post racked up thousands of likes. I realized redemption stories travel farther than revenge tales. At home, peace settled into mundane rituals. We argued over thermostat settings, laughed over cereal commercials, planned a road trip to the Rockies. One night, sorting laundry, Sarah found the podcast royalty check. She held it up. Donate. Half, I said. Other half buys skateboards for the wellness pilot. Not every kid wants a bike. She kissed me for the idea. In September, we hosted a backyard barbecue. Brittany brought artisan bread. Courtney delivered a speech about playground safety grants. Lindsay arrived on a vintage motorcycle. Neighbors couldn't tell we had once stood at courtroom drama odds. Forgiveness, like ivy, had crawled quietly over the cracks. As fireflies blinked, Sarah clinked a spoon against her glass. I want to thank Michael for showing us pride can apologize and humility can accept applause. I raised my drink. And thanks Sarah for teaching me transparency isn't bragging, it's trust. Applause mingled with crickets. Somewhere a child laughed from the trampoline. I looked at the faces around the patio, engineers, artists, ex-enemies turned allies, and felt the spaciousness of a life reclaimed from hiding. When the last guest left, Sarah and I lay on the grass, the smell of charcoal fading. She whispered, "Do you still worry I love the CEO more than the kid with the junkyard bike?" I traced a constellation with my finger. "No, I worry you love me too much to let me hide from either." She laughed softly. "Deal." We lay there until dew soaked our shirts, then went inside, leaving the porch light off to honor the stars. Years will pass. Markets will crash. Technologies will rise dawns. Yet I suspect the story people will remember is simpler. A man fired 3 bullies, forgave them, and built a company where respect pays dividends. And if they listen closely, maybe they'll hear the rattle of a chain cutting through all that noise, singing a pitch of grace.